The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual mix of languages, telepathic whispers, and chemical signals that pass for conversation among the 47 member species. Ambassador Zura Chun sat quietly in the human delegation's corner, her dark eyes scanning the room with practiced diplomacy. At 19, she was the youngest ambassador in council history, a fact that hadn't escaped the notice of her fellow delegates. "Look at the little human child," hissed Ambassador Crixtal, her serpentine form coiling around her delegation's platform. The Vorth were known for their venom, both chemical and verbal, playing dress-up in mommy's clothes. The comment carried across the chamber's translation matrix, ensuring every delegate heard it in their native tongue. A few species chuckled, wet, clicking sounds from the aquatic Delphians, harmonic vibrations from the crystalline resonance. Zara's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but she maintained her composure. "Ambassador Crixtal," Zara said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I appreciate your concern for my wardrobe choices, though I must say yours is quite striking as well. That shade of mottled green really brings out the toxicity in your eyes." More laughter rippled through the chamber, though this time it was directed at the Vorth ambassador. Crixtal's head flared, her neck hood expanding in anger. "You dare mock me, primitive? Your species has been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. My people were building star bridges when your ancestors were still throwing feces at each other." Zara stood slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. At her full height, she was tiny compared to most delegates. Humans were among the smallest sentient species in the galaxy. But something in her posture made the chamber fall silent. "You're absolutely right, Ambassador. Humanity is young, inexperienced, and, frankly, quite primitive compared to most species here." Her words surprised everyone, including her own delegation. "We don't have scales that deflect energy weapons. We can't breathe methane or survive in the vacuum of space. We don't have telepathic abilities or the power to manipulate gravity with our minds." The Vorth ambassador's tongue flicked out, tasting victory in the air. "Finally, the child speaks truth. But we do have something else," Zara continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The chamber's acoustics carried her words to every corner. "We have a saying on Earth. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Perhaps you'd like to test that theory sometime." The threat was subtle, wrapped in diplomatic language, but every species in the chamber understood its implications. The Vorth had been testing human resolve for months, pushing boundaries, seeing how far they could go. Their latest provocation had been the seizure of 3 human cargo ships in neutral space, claiming they were carrying contraband. Crixtal's laugh was like steam escaping from a broken pipe. "Are you threatening the Vorth Empire, little girl? We have conquered 17 systems. Our fleet numbers in the thousands. What does humanity have? A few hundred ships and delusions of grandeur. We have something you don't," Zara replied calmly. "Imagination." The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Many species in the galaxy had evolved past what humans considered creativity. Their technologies were advanced, but stagnant, their warfare predictable, their thinking linear. They had achieved perfection in their own eyes, which had made them complacent. Imagination. Kriegstahl spot. Your imagination won't stop plasma cannons or deflect quantum torpedoes. "Perhaps not," Zara agreed. "But it might just surprise you what we can do with it." The session ended soon after, with the usual bureaucratic shuffling and political maneuvering. As delegates filed out, many gave Zara curious glances. Some seemed amused by the young human's boldness. Others appeared concerned. Back in her private quarters aboard the human diplomatic vessel, Zara activated a secure communication link. The holographic image of Admiral Sarah Martinez appeared, her weathered face grim. "I saw the session feed," the Admiral said without preamble. "Did you have to antagonize the Vorth?" "They started it," Zara replied, then caught herself. "Sorry, Admiral. That sounded childish." "It did. But you're not wrong. The Vorth have been pushing us for months. How do you want to handle this?" Zara looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, Vorth ships were patrolling human trade routes, growing bolder by the day. They thought humanity was weak, young, easily intimidated. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "I have an idea," Zara said softly, "but you're not going to like it." The Admiral's expression didn't change. "I'm listening." "We're going to give them exactly what they expect, a young, impulsive species making reckless decisions. And then we're going to show them why that's the most dangerous thing in the galaxy 3 weeks after the diplomatic incident." Ambassador Krixtal felt quite satisfied with herself. The human child had made threats, but nothing had come of them. Typical human bluster, all bark and no bite. The Vorth Empire continued its customs inspections of human vessels, and several more have been impounded for safety violations. Status report. Krixtal commanded as she slithered into the command center of her flagship, the Venomous Pride. The massive dreadnought was the pride of the Vorth fleet, armed with enough firepower to glass a small moon. 3 more human cargo ships detained today, reported Commander Slickson, his scales rippling with pleasure. Their protests grow more desperate. The humans have requested another diplomatic meeting. "Let them beg," Krixtal hissed. "Their weakness disgusts me. In the old days, such insults to Vorth honor would have meant war. Instead, they send strongly worded messages and file complaints with the Council." What neither Krixtal nor her crew noticed was the small object that had attached itself to their ship's hull during the last inspection. It was barely the size of a human fist, its surface covered in adaptive camouflage that made it virtually invisible. Inside the device, sophisticated sensors recorded everything: energy signatures, shield frequencies, weapon configurations, crew rotations. Similar devices have been placed on dozens of Vorth vessels over the past 3 weeks. The deployment method was brilliantly simple and utterly human in its audacity. Rather than trying to sneak past Vorth sensors, human engineers had simply built the devices to look like space debris, the kind of cosmic junk that accumulated around any busy shipping lane. When Vorth ships performed their inspections, the debris naturally drifted close enough for the device's magnetic grapplers to activate. The Vorth, confident in their superiority, never bothered to scan for such primitive surveillance methods. Meanwhile, in a classified facility beneath Luna's surface, Admiral Martinez watched data stream in from across Vorth space. The intelligence picture was becoming clearer by the hour. "Fascinating," murmured Dr. Elizabeth Chun, Zara's older sister and the head of Human Fleet Intelligence. Despite sharing a name, the sisters were nothing alike. Where Zara was diplomatic and charismatic, Elizabeth was coldly analytical. Their fleet dispositions follow a pattern established 3 centuries ago. No innovation, no adaptation. "They're predictable," Admiral Martinez agreed. "But they're also numerous. The Vorth could overwhelm us through sheer numbers." "Not if we're smart about it," Elizabeth replied, highlighting sections of the holographic display. "Look at these patrol routes. They follow the same paths their ancestors used. Their ships dock at the same stations for supplies. Their commanders follow protocol to the letter. You're thinking asymmetric warfare. I'm thinking we give them exactly what they expect, and then do something they've never seen before." On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Jake Morrison received his orders through a heavily encrypted channel. His ship, the merchant vessel Pleasant Journey, was one of dozens of seemingly ordinary cargo haulers that had been modified in secret shipyards throughout human space. "Looks like it's showtime, people," Morrison announced to his crew of 20. To any observer, they appear to be typical merchant spacers, rough, practical, focused on profit. In reality, they were all volunteers from various human military branches, specially trained for this mission. "Remember," Morrison continued, "we follow standard merchant protocols. No heroics, no deviation from the script. Let them come to us." The Pleasant Journey's cargo hold was indeed filled with legitimate trade goods, rare earth spices, entertainment media, and artisanal crafts that were popular throughout the galaxy. But hidden behind false bulkheads were other things: military-grade sensors, communications equipment, and weapons that no merchant ship should possess. As they approached the Vorth patrol zone, Morrison's sensor operator spoke up. Contact. 3 Vorth cruisers bearing down fast. Right on schedule, Morrison muttered. All hands, prepare for inspection. And, remember, we're just scare merchants. The lead Vorth cruiser, Fierce Talon, moved alongside the human ship with predatory grace. Captain Vexael was typical of his species, arrogant, aggressive, and convinced of Vorth superiority. He had conducted hundreds of these inspections and found them amusing. Humans were so easy to intimidate. Human vessel, prepare to be boarded, Vexael commanded. Any resistance will be met with the destruction of your ship. Understood, Vorth vessel, Morrison replied, allowing just the right amount of fear to creep into his voice. We're transmitting our cargo manifest now. Please don't hurt us. Vexael's crew hissed with laughter. Human cowardice never failed to entertain them. As the boarding party prepared, none of them noticed the seemingly random pattern of sensor pings emanating from the human ship. To their instruments, it appeared to be routine scans, the kind any nervous merchant might perform. In reality, the pings were mapping the Vorth ships down to the bolt level. Every armor plate, every weapon mount, every potential weakness was being cataloged and transmitted to hidden receivers throughout the system. The boarding proceeded exactly as scripted. The Vorth found contraband, weapons that had been deliberately planted where they would be discovered. Morrison and his crew played their roles perfectly, protesting their innocence while cowering before Vorth superiority. Take them to the detention facility on Koros Station, Vexael ordered, his tongue flicking out with satisfaction. Let them rot with the other human criminals. As the pleasant journey was towed away, its crew imprisoned, no one realized that the capture had gone exactly according to plan. The ship's hidden transmitters continued to broadcast, now from inside the most secure Vorth facility in the sector. Back on Luna, Admiral Martinez studied the latest intelligence reports. Dozens of human ships had been captured over the past week, their crews imprisoned throughout Vorth space. To outside observers, it appeared that human merchant shipping was collapsing under Vorth pressure. Ambassador Zara's voice came through the secure channel. The Council is pressuring us to back down. Several species are suggesting we accept Vorth demands to avoid further escalation. Perfect, Martinez replied. The weaker we appear, the more overconfident they become. How are our people holding up? Morale is high. Everyone knows this is the most important mission in human history. They're willing to play the part of defeated prisoners if it helps sell the deception. Elizabeth Chun looked up from her analysis station. We're almost ready. 2 more days of intelligence gathering, and we'll have everything we need. And then? Zara asked. Martinez's smile was predatory. Then, we show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity. The Vorth want to see our true nature. They're about to get there. Wish Ambassador Crixtal was enjoying the finest luxuries her empire could provide aboard the Venomous Pride when the first reports arrived. Her scaled fingers traced the rim of her favorite goblet, filled with fermented nectar from the conquered worlds of the Tillari system. The humans have been quiet for over a week now. No more defiant messages, no diplomatic protests. Finally, they had learned their place. Ambassador, Communications Officer Hissera interrupted her reverie. Priority message from High Command. Crixtal's mood soured at the interruption, but she gestured for the transmission. The holographic image of Supreme Fleet Commander Veldar materialized before her, his massive form radiating authority and barely controlled anger. Crixtal, he began without preamble. Explain to me why our long-range sensors are detecting unusual energy signatures throughout our territory. What kind of signatures? Crixtal asked, though something cold began to form in her stomach. Unknown type. They appear and disappear randomly. Our technicians believe they may be some form of scanning beam, but the pattern makes no sense. It's as if someone is taking detailed scans of our facilities and ships. Crixtal forced herself to remain calm. Impossible. No species has the technology to penetrate our sensor nets without detection. Perhaps it's simply solar interference or cosmic background radiation. That's what I hoped, Veldar replied grimly. Until this arrived 30 minutes ago. A new image replaced the Supreme Commander, a tactical display showing the outer system of Koros Prime, the Vorth Empire's most heavily defended world. Red markers indicated the positions of their most powerful warships, space stations, and defensive platforms. Every detail was perfect, down to individual weapon placements and shield generator locations. This was transmitted on an open frequency, visible to every species in the galaxy, Veldar continued. Attached was a simple message. Ready or not, here we come. Humanity. The goblet slipped from Krikstal's fingers, shattering against the deck plates. That's impossible. How could primitive humans have such detailed intelligence? That's what you're going to find out. I'm ordering you to... The transmission cut off abruptly. Emergency lighting bathed the command center in crimson, and alarms began wailing throughout the ship. Through the viewports, space itself seemed to shimmer and distort. Report, Krikstal demanded, her voice cracking with sudden fear. Massive energy surge detected, the sensor operator called out. It's like nothing in our databases. The energy pattern is completely alien. From where? Everywhere, Ambassador. It's surrounding us. What Krikstal couldn't know was that 47 human ships were currently distributed throughout Vorth space, each one a captured merchant vessel that had been playing prisoner for weeks. Their crews, supposedly detained in Vorth prison facilities, had been very busy. Captain Morrison stood in what appeared to be a detention cell on Koros Station, but his calm demeanor would have surprised his captors. The cell's walls looked solid, but they contained hidden panels that had been carefully modified over the past weeks. Behind those panels lay sophisticated equipment that no merchant ship should possess. Phase 1 complete. Morrison spoke into a concealed communicator. All observation posts are active. Similar messages echoed across Vorth space. Every captured human ship, every imprisoned crew member, every piece of contraband cargo had been part of an elaborate intelligence operation. The Vorth had been so confident in their superiority that they hadn't bothered with thorough searches or proper security protocols. In the depths of the venomous pride itself, Chief Engineer Maria Santos emerged from a maintenance tunnel that shouldn't have been accessible to detained personnel. Her Vorth captors believed she was locked in a ship's brig, but human engineers had a talent for finding ways through supposedly impregnable barriers. Timer set, she whispered into her communicator. 60 seconds and counting. Back on Luna, Admiral Martinez watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Green lights appeared across the hologram as each team reported their readiness. Years of planning, months of preparation, and weeks of careful positioning had led to this moment. Dr. Chun, status on the Quantum Resonance Network. Elizabeth Chen's fingers danced across her console. All nodes are active and synchronized. We have real-time tactical data on every major Vorth installation and fleet position. Transmission from the diplomatic vessel. Communications reported. Ambassador Chun is requesting final authorization. Martinez nodded. Put her through. Zara's image appeared on the main screen, her face composed, but her eyes blazing with determination. Admiral, the Vorth are mobilizing their forces. They know something is happening, but not what. Krikstal is demanding explanations and threatening retaliation. Any regrets about provoking them? Martinez asked. Zara's smile was cold as space itself. She called us primitive children. She mocked our inexperience and our naivety. She thought we would roll over and accept their bullying because we're young and weak. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more threat than any shout. She's about to learn that the most dangerous thing in the universe is an angry human with a plan. Initiate Operation Payback, Martinez ordered. Across Vorth space, seemingly impossible things began to happen. Ships that had been considered captured suddenly, powered up with energy signatures that made no sense. Space stations experienced cascading system failures as their own maintenance systems turned against them. Warships found their weapons offline, their shields failing, their communications scrambled. On the Venomous Pride, Crixtal watched in horror as her ship's most secure systems began reporting impossible data. According to her instruments, the ship was simultaneously in 14 different locations, moving at 17 different velocities, and being commanded by 32 different officers. "What's happening?" she demanded. "Unknown, Ambassador," her chief technician replied, his voice high with panic. "It's as if our computers have gone insane. Nothing makes sense anymore." What they couldn't understand was that every piece of equipment on their ship had been quietly compromised over the weeks of human presence. Tiny devices, smaller than a Vorth scale, had been planted throughout the vessel's systems. Now those devices were activated, feeding false data to the ship's computers while transmitting real information to human forces. The Vorth Empire, built on the foundation of predictable protocols and rigid hierarchy, found itself paralyzed by chaos. Their own systems were lying to them, their communications were compromised, and their enemies seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. And in the depths of space, human ships began to move with purpose toward their targets. The attack began at exactly 0300 Standard Galactic Time, not with massive explosions or grand fleet movements, but with silence. Across 17 star systems, Vorth communication networks simply stopped working. Ships found themselves isolated, unable to coordinate with command structures or even nearby vessels. Supreme Fleet Commander Veldar stared at his tactical display in growing horror. Red indicators showed system failures throughout his empire, but the pattern made no sense. Critical infrastructure was being targeted, but not destroyed. Instead, it was being turned against itself. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. "None destroyed, Supreme Commander," his aide replied nervously. "But 47 vessels are reporting complete systems failures. They're dead in space." 47, Veldar repeated slowly. The same number as the human merchant ships they had captured. "Give me a direct line to Ambassador Crixtal." "Communication networks are down, sir. We can't reach the Venomous Pride." Aboard her flagship, Crixtal was discovering exactly how vulnerable the Vorth Empire's most advanced warship could be. Every system seemed to be failing in carefully orchestrated sequence. First communications, then navigation, then life support began fluctuating ominously. "Emergency power to all systems," she ordered, but her crew looked back at her with expressions of helpless confusion. "Ambassador," her chief engineer reported, "the emergency systems are also compromised. It's as if someone has rewritten our ship's basic operational codes." That someone was Chief Engineer Maria Santos, who was no longer hiding her presence aboard the Vorth vessel. She walked through the corridors openly now, her human engineering team spreading out through the ship's critical systems. The Vorth crew they encountered seemed frozen in disbelief. "Impossible," one Vorth officer hissed as Santos calmly accessed the control panel. "You are in detention. These systems require biometric authorization." Santos looked up from her work with a patient smile. "Your security systems have been recognizing my biometrics for 2 weeks now. Amazing what you can accomplish when your captors think you're too primitive to understand their technology." The truth was even more elegant than that. Human engineers hadn't broken Vorth security. They had convinced it that they belonged there. Months of careful intelligence gathering had provided complete biometric profiles of Vorth personnel. During their imprisonment, human infiltrators had gradually introduced those profiles into the ship's security systems, making themselves invisible to the very scanners meant to keep them contained. Now, as the Vorth Empire's most secure vessels found themselves controlled by their former prisoners, the scope of human planning became clear. This hadn't been a desperate response to Vorth aggression. It had been a carefully orchestrated lesson in the dangers of underestimating humanity. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Venomous Pride, calmly issuing orders to his mixed human Vorth crew. The Vorth officers who had once sneered at human weakness now followed his commands without question, their own ship systems refusing to respond to anyone else. Status report. Morrison requested politely. "All primary systems under our control," reported his communications officer. "Weapon systems offline, propulsion locked, life support maintained at minimum safe levels." Morrison nodded and activated the ship's intercom. "Attention, crew of the Venomous Pride. This is Captain Morrison of the Human Defense Force. Your ship is now under human control, but you are not prisoners. Your life support will be maintained, your safety guaranteed, and your dignity respected, courtesies that were not extended to human prisoners." Throughout the ship, Vorth crew members listened in stunned silence. They had expected death or torture, the kind of treatment they would have given to defeated enemies. Instead, they found themselves treated with the same professionalism they had once mocked as human weakness. The psychological impact was devastating. The Vorth prided themselves on strength, on the ability to dominate through superior force. To be defeated not by overwhelming firepower but by cleverness, patience, and planning was a blow to their fundamental worldview. Similar scenes played out across Vorth space. Human teams emerged from hiding places throughout the Empire, revealing the true scope of their infiltration. Supply stations found their automated systems responding only to human commands. Warships discovered that their most trusted crew members had been working with human intelligence for months. The Galactic Council received detailed reports of the operation within hours. Species that had dismissed humanity as too young and inexperienced to matter suddenly found themselves re-evaluating their assumptions. Ambassador Thrain of the Crystalline Resonance transmitted a priority message to his homeworld. Human tactical capabilities have been severely underestimated. Their approach to warfare is unlike anything in our databases. They have turned the Vorth Empire's strength against itself without firing a single shot. The aquatic Delphians, who had laughed at human diplomatic efforts, sent urgent directives to their border fleets. Maintain respectful distance from human space. Do not provoke. Their retaliation capabilities are beyond our current understanding. But the most significant reaction came from the Zephyrians, an ancient species that had remained neutral in galactic politics for millennia. Their ambassador, a being so old that he remembered the rise and fall of 3 galactic civilizations, sent a simple message to the Council. The humans have demonstrated something we have not seen in 2,000 years, true strategic innovation. Every species in this galaxy fights the same way their ancestors did. Only humanity has shown the ability to completely reimagine the nature of conflict itself. This changes everything. Back in the human delegation chambers, Ambassador Zura-Chun received continuous updates on the operation's progress. Her satisfaction wasn't about the victory itself. It was about the message being sent to the galaxy. "Admiral," she said into her secure communicator, "how are our people treating their prisoners?" "By the book," Martinez replied. "Medical attention for the injured, proper food and water, respectful treatment." Several Vorth officers have commented that they're being treated better as prisoners than they treated human detainees. Good. This was never about revenge. It was about respect. As news of the operation spread throughout the galaxy, one fact became clear. Humanity had not simply defeated the Vorth Empire. They had done so while demonstrating a level of strategic thinking and operational sophistication that established them as a major galactic power overnight. The young species that had been mocked for their inexperience had just taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget 6 months after Operation Payback. The Galactic Council convened for an emergency session unlike any in its 1,000-year history. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 species gathered to address what historians would later call the human revelation. Ambassador Zura-Chun entered the chamber to a very different reception than her last visit. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as delegates turned to watch her passage. The young woman who had once been dismissed as a naive child now commanded the kind of respect reserved for the galaxy's most formidable powers. She took her seat with the same quiet dignity she had always possessed, but something had fundamentally changed in how others perceived her. The Vorth delegation's seats sat conspicuously empty. Ambassador Krixtal had requested indefinite leave from her position, citing health concerns that everyone knew were psychological. The emergency session will come to order, announced Council Prime Minister Valdris, his ancient voice carrying across the chamber. The ethereal gaseous form shimmered with unusual agitation. We are here to address the unprecedented events of the past 6 months and their implications for galactic stability. The first to speak was Ambassador Thrain of the Resonance, his crystalline body chiming softly as he stood. Honorable delegates, we must acknowledge a fundamental shift in galactic power dynamics. The human operation against the Vorth Empire has demonstrated capabilities that require immediate diplomatic recalibration. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The humans had not simply won a conflict. They had redefined what victory looked like. The Vorth Empire, while not destroyed, had been so thoroughly humiliated that they had voluntarily withdrawn from 23 star systems, declaring them too strategically complex to maintain. The humans returned our ships and personnel unharmed, announced Admiral Crestole of the Vorth military, speaking for his absent ambassador. They could have destroyed our entire fleet, but instead chose to demonstrate their superiority and then withdraw. We do not understand the strategy. That was the heart of the matter. Every species in the galaxy understood conquest through force, subjugation through superior firepower, or victory through technological advantage. But humanity had introduced something entirely new: victory through superior strategy combined with restraint. They had proven they could destroy their enemies, then chosen not to. Ambassador Ilex of the telepathic Mentari spoke next, her thoughts translated into audible words by the chamber systems. We have attempted to understand human tactical thinking through our usual methods. The results are disturbing. Human strategic planning appears to operate on multiple simultaneous levels of consideration, accounting for variables that most species dismiss as irrelevant. She paused, her mental emanations showing clear unease. They plan not just for victory, but for the psychological and political aftermath of victory. They consider not just what they can do, but what they should do. This level of strategic sophistication is unprecedented. From her seat, Zara listened to the analysis with growing amusement. They were describing human nature as if it were some revolutionary technology, when from humanity's perspective, they had simply done what made sense. The galaxy's other species, for all their advanced technologies and ancient wisdom, seemed to lack something humans consider basic: the ability to think creatively under pressure. When called upon to speak, Zara rose with the same quiet confidence she had always displayed. But this time, the chamber fell completely silent, waiting for her words with respectful attention. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. "6 months ago, Ambassador Krixtal mocked humanity for our youth and inexperience. She was not wrong. We are young, and we are inexperienced. What she failed to understand is that those qualities are not weaknesses." She gestured to the star charts displayed around the chamber. "Every species here has achieved remarkable things. You have built star-spanning civilizations, mastered technologies we can barely comprehend, and created wonders that inspire awe. But in your success, you have become predictable." The word hit the chamber like a physical blow. Predictable was perhaps the worst insult one could level at a spacefaring civilization. The Vorth follow military protocols established centuries ago. The resonants communicate through harmonic patterns that haven't changed in millennia. The Delphians still use the same trade routes their ancestors carved through space. You have achieved perfection in your chosen paths, and perfection, by definition, cannot improve. Zara's smile was warm, but her words were sharp as any blade. Humanity hasn't achieved perfection. We probably never will. But that means we can still change, still adapt, still surprise ourselves, and apparently surprise you as well. Ambassador Philones of the Ancient Archivist spoke up, his mechanical voice precise and measured. "Ambassador Chun, Are you suggesting that humanity's perceived weaknesses are actually strategic advantages? I'm suggesting that diversity of thought is the most powerful force in the universe, Zara replied. The galaxy has achieved remarkable stability by having each species excel in specific areas. But stability can become stagnation. When every response is predictable, every strategy follows known patterns, evolution stops. She turned to address the chamber as a whole. Humanity doesn't want to conquer the galaxy or overthrow the existing order. We want to contribute to it. But that contribution requires respect, not just for our achievements, but for our potential to achieve things no one has yet imagined. The implications of her words settled over the chamber like a blanket of stars. The galaxy had operated under a system where ancient, established species guided younger ones through predictable stages of development. Humanity was proposing something different, a partnership between experience and innovation. Prime Minister Valdris's form shimmered as he considered her words. And what guarantees do you offer that human creativity will not destabilize the peace we have maintained for centuries? Zara's response was immediate and firm. The same guarantee we've always offered, our actions. We had the power to destroy the Vorth Empire. Instead, we demonstrated our capabilities and withdrew. We could have used their humiliation to demand concessions or territory. Instead, we helped them understand how to prevent similar vulnerabilities in the future. She paused, letting her words sink in. Humanity doesn't seek dominion. We seek partnership. But any partnership requires mutual respect, and respect cannot be built on the foundation of condescension and mockery. In the months that followed, the Galactic Council would formally recognize humanity as a Category Alpha species, a classification that had not been created in over 800 years. Trade agreements were renegotiated, diplomatic protocols were revised, and human perspectives began to be actively sought on complex galactic issues. The Vorth Empire, chastened by their experience, became unlikely allies in human diplomatic efforts. Ambassador Crixtal would eventually return to service, though she never again made the mistake of underestimating any species based on age or apparent weakness. But perhaps the most significant change was subtler. Young species throughout the galaxy began to look to humanity as an example of what was possible when innovation met determination. The galaxy's ancient stability began to crack, not from warfare or rebellion, but from a sudden explosion of new ideas and approaches to old problems. As Zara-chan had predicted, the galaxy learned a lesson it would never forget. The price of mockery was not measured in destroyed ships or conquered worlds. It was measured in the fundamental shift of galactic consciousness that occurred when a young species proved that experience was no substitute for imagination, and that the most dangerous force in the universe was indeed an angry human with a plan. The galaxy had gotten exactly what it asked for when it tested humanity's resolve. Unfortunately for the established order, what humanity delivered was far more transformative than anyone had expected. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual mix of languages, telepathic whispers, and chemical signals that passed for conversation among the 47-member species. Ambassador Zura-chun sat quietly in the human delegation's corner, her dark eyes scanning the room with practiced diplomacy. At 19, she was the youngest ambassador in council history, a fact that hadn't escaped the notice of her fellow delegates. "Look at the little human child," hissed Ambassador Crixtal, her serpentine form coiling around her delegation's platform. The Vorth were known for their venom, both chemical and verbal, playing dress-up in mommy's clothes. The comment carried across the chamber's translation matrix, ensuring every delegate heard it in their native tongue. A few species chuckled, wet, clicking sounds from the aquatic Delphians, harmonic vibrations from the crystalline resonance. Zara's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but she maintained her composure. "Ambassador Crixtal," Zara said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I appreciate your concern for my wardrobe choices, though I must say yours is quite striking as well." That shade of mottle green really brings out the toxicity in your eyes. More laughter rippled through the chamber, though this time it was directed at the Vorth ambassador. Krikstal's head flared, her neck hood expanding in anger. You dare mock me, primitive? Your species has been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. My people were building star bridges when your ancestors were still throwing feces at each other. Zara stood slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. At her full height, she was tiny compared to most delegates. Humans were among the smallest sentient species in the galaxy. But something in her posture made the chamber fall silent. You're absolutely right, Ambassador. Humanity is young, inexperienced, and, frankly, quite primitive compared to most species here. Her words surprised everyone, including her own delegation. We don't have scales that deflect energy weapons. We can't breathe methane or survive in the vacuum of space. We don't have telepathic abilities or the power to manipulate gravity with our minds. The Vorth ambassador's tongue flicked out, tasting victory in the air. Finally, the child speaks truth. But we do have something else, Zara continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The chamber's acoustics carried her words to every corner. We have a saying on Earth. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Perhaps you'd like to test that theory sometime. The threat was subtle, wrapped in diplomatic language, but every species in the chamber understood its implications. The Vorth had been testing human resolve for months, pushing boundaries, seeing how far they could go. Their latest provocation had been the seizure of 3 human cargo ships in neutral space, claiming they were carrying contraband. Krikstal's laugh was like steam escaping from a broken pipe. Are you threatening the Vorth Empire, little girl? We have conquered 17 systems. Our fleet numbers in the thousands. What does humanity have? A few hundred ships and delusions of grandeur. We have something you don't, Zara replied calmly. Imagination. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Many species in the galaxy had evolved past what humans consider creativity. Their technologies were advanced but stagnant, their warfare predictable, their thinking linear. They had achieved perfection in their own eyes, which had made them complacent. Imagination. Krikstalspot. Your imagination won't stop plasma cannons or deflect quantum torpedoes. Perhaps not, Zara agreed. But it might just surprise you what we can do with it. The session ended soon after, with the usual bureaucratic shuffling and political maneuvering. As delegates filed out, many gave Zara curious glances. Some seemed amused by the young human's boldness. Others appeared concerned. Back in her private quarters aboard the human diplomatic vessel, Zara activated a secure communication link. The holographic image of Admiral Sarah Martinez appeared, her weathered face grim. I saw the session feed, the Admiral said without preamble. Did you have to antagonize the Vorth? They started it, Zara replied, then caught herself. Sorry, Admiral. That sounded childish. It did. But you're not wrong. The Vorth have been pushing us for months. How do you want to handle this? Zara looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, Vorth ships were patrolling human trade routes, growing bolder by the day. They thought humanity was weak, young, easily intimidated. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I have an idea, Zara said softly. But you're not going to like it. The Admiral's expression didn't change. I'm listening. We're going to give them exactly what they expect. A young, impulsive species making reckless decisions.